Wojnarowski is joining us live after breaking the news of this blockbuster trade that sends James Harden to Philadelphia and brings Ben Simmons and multiple others to Brooklyn. Woj, what more can you tell us about how this deal came together?
Well, Brooklyn and Philadelphia really started to negotiate in earnest today. I was told Philadelphia had checked in previous days, had lobbed offers that had been returned without a counter. But today, Brooklyn started to talk about with Philadelphia what a deal would look like. And where it lands is James Harden, who'll go along with Paul Millsap to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and then a 2022 unprotected first-round pick in this coming draft, a 2027 protected pick that might flip to 28. But obviously the key elements here, Brooklyn was ready to move off of James Harden, and it was clear he didn't want to be there anymore. They knew that, and they got enough back in their minds to try to put a team on the floor this year and then beyond that can still compete for a championship. But James Harden, listen, this has been the goal of Daryl Morey since the day he arrived in Philadelphia. He wasn't able to trade for James Harden with the Houston Rockets. The Brooklyn Nets did. And now just a year later, Harden has essentially forced his way out of a second team in consecutive years. He goes to Philadelphia. He's been paired with a lot of stars in this league, and he gets a new one. Joel Embiid, a new co-star, and Ben Simmons comes to Brooklyn. We'll see how quickly Simmons is able to be able to get into the lineup, play. Seth Curry, certainly an impactful player, especially with Joe Harris. The rest of his season uncertain with an injury, but the blockbuster is done. James Harden is headed to the Philadelphia 76ers, and Ben Simmons is going to be in net.
Two players that remain on the 76ers roster are Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey. Why was it important, Woj, for them to stay with Philadelphia?
Well, I think the leverage the Sixers had was that Brooklyn knew that he was likely headed there in free agency this summer. And Brooklyn, listen, Brooklyn would have loved, I think, either of those players. I think they got back, given the situation they're in, they get back a package here that they could obviously live with. But the Sixers are able to keep Thybulle and obviously able to keep Tyrese Maxey, which I think was a non-starter for them.
Woj, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man. We will see you back here soon. Really appreciate it. I do want to bring it back to the panel just for a moment here because, Perk, I interrupted your thought in the middle of this. We know Paul Millsap, he also has been out for personal reasons for several games here. He wanted a trade. He got that. But your thoughts on this trade?
Well, he didn't want to be around that culture either. He didn't want to deal with Kyrie nonsense either. That's probably why he was out. I'm not, I don't know that for facts, but I'm just assuming. But when you look at this 76ers team, okay, when you look at this 76ers team, we know Joel Embiid right now, we could argue that he's probably the best player in the NBA. One could say that. Over the last few months, he has proven to us that he's the best player in the NBA.
Better than Giannis?
I said what I said.
I just want to
most dominant. Okay,
no, dominant with the best.
No, it's not. It's two completely different conversations.
And domination.
So,
yeah.
So I'm not with this. I'm not with this. But listen, when you think about James Harden, we thought last year in Houston before he got traded to the Nets, he was fat and out of shape. And then all of a sudden, as soon as he stepped foot in Brooklyn,
his hamstring gonna feel a lot better.
Exactly.
His hamstring's gonna feel a lot better.
And guess what? He's going to have something to prove. But I'm gonna take you a little deeper real quick. See, this is the problem, right? Let me tell you how James Harden ended up in Brooklyn. See, it goes all the way back in time when KD signed with Golden State, okay? James Harden wanted Kevin Durant, his friend that he played with in Oklahoma City, to come to Houston. KD turned that down. At a point in time, KD and James did not speak for years. So all of a sudden you get to this point last year where they acquired James Harden to try to get their friendship back together try to get this thing back together and try to win a ring together. So James is like, all right, I'm going to give up everything that I got in Houston. I'm going to come down there to Brooklyn. Let's get it rocking. Let's try to win. And he get there, and it's not what it's expected.
Well, let me ask you this then, Zach. Is James Harden in a better position? Because we know at the end of the day, what James Harden wants is to win. It's what he told me at the beginning of the year when I sat down with him. It's what he told me in December when I sat down with him. Is he in a better position to win now with Philadelphia than he was alongside the current Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant that we are seeing with the Brooklyn Nets now?
I think he probably is over the version of the Nets that have been playing this week, or the version even with Kyrie playing half the games, because they did keep Maxey, they get Tybalt, Danny Green, Tobias Harris. They could probably cobble enough depth. But look, at the beginning of the year, I thought the Nets were overwhelming favorites to win the championship. Then the Kyrie situation went haywire. Then this happened. So at the beginning of the year, I thought they were easy favorites. But now, given the state of the Nets, assuming James perks up, as he tends to do upon changing destinations, I think it's probably slightly better. But look, the East is like none of these top teams in the East. We haven't even talked about Miami.
We'll get there.
We're not going to disrespect James Harden because he is great. He's one of the greatest players of this generation. He is this. But at what point in time has James Harden ever looked like he was always going to do everything it took to win? And that's my thing. Like, James Harden wants to win. We all want to win. Everybody on this panel wants to win. Every NBA player wants to win. It's the players that can sacrifice. It's the players that can push everything towards the middle and try and get a win.
I will say this, though. James Harden has become a 9-time All-Star, 3-time scoring champ, and an MVP, playing with, decent, if not, better than decent posts. You had a period in Houston when he was with Dwight Howard. He made Clint Capella great. And now you look at him playing with Joel Embiid, who's averaging 29 and 11. This is the best post player, pick and roll mate that he's ever probably likely going to have, especially with Joel Embiid continues to play this way. So.
Well, and in just a little bit, we're going to get a breakdown from Chiney Ogumake about exactly how this is going to look. But I do want to get with our other insiders that are joining us in studio, Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst. So again, the details of this trade. Brooklyn Nets, they're trading James Harden to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. That's according to our Adrian Wojnarowski. Now here, though, with our insiders, Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst. And I want to start with you here, Ramona. You have been very closely reporting on Ben Simmons really all year long. What more can you tell us here?
Well, Ben Simmons is thrilled. I mean, the text message I've got this morning are, finally. That is the word. And Ben's been working with a therapist since the fall when he got back to Philadelphia. He actually was working with somebody over the summer as well. And there's going to take some time here. He's going to take his time to get acclimated in Brooklyn. He's going to still see his mental health therapist and take some time to just get his footing there in Brooklyn. But he couldn't be more thrilled. He's already talked to Kevin Durant. Can't wait to get going. And as we reported last week, he did choose to get vaccinated. So initially he wasn't, but now he is. And so that won't be a problem with New York's vaccination rules.
Well, and that makes a big difference, obviously, already having one part-time player, if you will. Brian, for you, what stands out the most about how this deal came together?
The Nets were going to have to trade James Harden when he essentially shut down last week in Sacramento. He basically decided he wasn't going to play for the Nets anymore. And once that happened, it was just a negotiation on how we got here. And were there times where this maybe was a no chance? Sure. Were there times this was very close? I'm sure there's going to be stories that come out soon about what we all went and sat down. But as soon as James Harden decided